Prince and the Pauper by Mark Twain.
Chapter 15. The New King, Tom Canty.
Now we return to the new king, Tom Canty. Tom slept well after the great banquet. He woke up and he thought he was in awful court. But then he opened his eyes. He saw his big bed and his servants. He was in the palace. "This is all real," he said to himself. 6 servants helped him to get dressed. They washed him, put on his clothes, and cut his hair. They made him look wonderful. Then another 6 servants took him to the breakfast room. They gave him food, and they stood and watched him. 2 hours later, he was ready. Tom was taken to the throne room. There were lots of important men in the room. They were all waiting for Tom, but Tom did not know why. He sat on the throne, and he was very quiet. The Lord Protector walked into the room. "We have got a very important meeting this morning. Now you are king, sir. We must talk about some important things. Your father spent a lot of money on the palace and on war. Now we haven't got much money." "What?" Tom asked. "The king was a very rich man. Everybody knows that." "No, sir," replied the Lord Protector. "We can't even pay the servants." "Oh dear," said Tom. "What shall we do?" "You are the king, sir. You tell us what to do." "I see," said Tom. He knew what to do. "This palace is too big. We will live in a smaller palace. And there is too much food at the banquets," he continued. "We don't need to eat so much food." The men in the room did not look happy. They did not like Tom's idea. "We will think about your ideas, sir," continued the Lord Protector. "But we have got more things to talk about." Tom was getting very bored. He wanted to play with his friends at Offal Court. He looked out of the window and saw a group of people. They were walking and shouting. "What are they doing? I would like to know," said Tom. The Lord Protector went outside to find out. When he returned, he told Tom, "The people are following 2 prisoners. The prisoners are going to prison forever. They will never see their families again." Tom thought this was terrible. "Bring them here," he said. The doors opened. The guards came in with 2 poor girls.
Chapter 16. The 2 Prisoners.
Tom looked at the prisoners. They were like his sisters, Nan and Bet. Why are they going to prison? He asked. They are witches, said the Lord Protector, very seriously. Witches? Cried out Tom. That's stupid! Everybody was surprised. At that time, a lot of people thought witches were real, but Tom had new ideas. There aren't any witches, he said. But these two girls are witches, said the Lord Protector. They started a storm. How did they start a storm? Asked Tom. They said some words, and they took off their shoes, said the Lord Protector. They took off their shoes, said Tom. He was laughing. Very well. Let's see. He asked the two young girls to stand up. They were very frightened and worried. Can you start a storm? He asked them. No, sir, the girls replied. People say we are witches because we are poor. They don't like us. Tom wanted to show everybody in the palace that the girls were not witches. Take off your shoes now, he said. Everybody in the room was very worried. Sir, said the Lord Protector, if they take off their shoes, there will be a terrible storm, or perhaps something worse. We will see, said Tom. The girls took off their shoes. Everybody waited and waited. Nothing happened. There was no rain, no wind, no storm. They are not witches, shouted Tom. Let these two girls go. The girls thanked Tom and they ran out of the palace. Everybody in the palace talked about Tom. Perhaps this new king isn't mad, they said. He's really clever.
Chapter 17. Edward is captured.
Miles could not find his young friend. He looked everywhere, but Edward was gone. In fact, he was with John Canty. Earlier that morning, John Canty was waiting outside Miles's room. He saw Miles leave the room and go to the market. Then he paid a boy to lie to Edward. Miles Hendon is hurt. He is far away, and he needs your help, the boy said to Edward. Take me to him, Edward replied. They walked to a forest far from London Bridge. Suddenly, John Canty jumped out. Edward tried to run away, but John Canty ran faster. He caught him, and he carried him into a barn. There were lots of men in the barn, and they were sitting around a fire. They were all big and dirty, and very noisy. Edward was frightened. He shouted for help, but Miles was not there. Edward said to John Canty, You are not my father. I am the king. You are mad, but you must be quiet, replied John Canty. I killed Father Andrew, and now I am hiding. Where are your mother and your sisters?"
"My mother is dead, and my sisters are in the palace,"
said Edward. "Sit down over there," said John Canty angrily. He made Edward sit in the corner, and he sat with the group of men. The men were telling stories about their lives. "I was a farmer," said one of the men. "I had a big farm, a beautiful wife, and 3 children. I was very happy. Now things are very different. Now I haven't got a farm or a family anymore." "What happened?" asked another man. Edward listened to the farmer telling his story. He felt sad for him. His life was very hard.
Chapter 18. The Farmer's Sad Story.
"My wife was a nurse, and she helped sick people. One day, someone said she was a witch. A judge sent her to prison, and he took my farm. My wife died in prison," said the farmer.
"What happened to your children?"
someone asked. "Well, after I lost my farm, we had to beg for food and money. We were so hungry, I stole food for my children. I was caught and sent to prison. When I got out of prison, I found my children were dead. There wasn't enough food for them," the farmer went on. Suddenly, Edward jumped up and shouted,
"I will make sure you get your farm back."
The men were all very surprised.
"How can you help me?"
asked the farmer.
"You're only John Canty's son." "I am not John Canty's son,"
said Edward angrily.
"I am Henry VIII's son. I am Edward, King of England."
Now the men were even more surprised.
"I'm sorry, my friends, but my son is mad,"
said John Canty. He pushed Edward into a little room and closed the door. Edward sat in there for hours, listening to the stories. Some of them were sad stories, like the farmer's. Other stories were about stealing money. It was late when Edward fell asleep.
Chapter 19. The Stolen Chicken.
The next morning, John Canty woke Edward up.
"Come on,"
he shouted.
"We're going to steal things."
Edward did not want to steal things, but there was nothing he could do. They walked to a village, and John Canty looked for something to steal. Edward was hoping he could run away. John Canty saw a woman carrying a big bag. He wanted that big bag. He walked behind her and took it. He began to run away.
"Stop, thief!"
shouted the woman. John Canty did not want to go to prison. Very quickly, he put the bag in Edward's hands. Then he ran away.
"There's the thief!"
the woman cried out.
"That boy there, he has got my bag." "No, it wasn't me, you stupid woman!"
shouted Edward.
"I didn't steal the bag." Yes, you did, she said. Look, it's in your hands now.
A lot of people were watching and shouting at Edward. He did not know what to do. He was the King of England, not a thief.
Don't worry, my boy.
Edward looked round and saw his friend Miles.
Miles!
He shouted across the people.
I need help.
I will help you, said Miles. An officer arrived and took Edward to a judge. The woman and Miles went too. The judge opened the bag and looked inside it. He was suddenly very serious.
There is a chicken in this bag, said the judge.
What's the problem?
Said Edward.
It's only a chicken.
Stealing an animal is a very serious crime, replied the judge. You must go to prison for a long time.
Edward was very frightened. He should be in the palace, not in a prison. What could he do? He turned to Miles for help, but Miles was talking quietly to the woman. Do you want to get a poor boy into trouble? Miles whispered to the woman. He is only young, and he will go to prison for a long time.
I've got a son the same age as this boy, she said. I don't want him to go to prison.
She was worried.
Stop!
She shouted to the judge.
Please stop. It is only an old chicken. Please, let the boy go.
This boy is a thief, said the judge. He must go to prison.
I'm sorry, sir,
begged the woman.
It was a mistake. I don't want the boy to go to prison.
The judge thought for a moment. He turned to Miles and the woman and said, Give the chicken to me, and this boy won't go to prison. The woman was angry, but she had to give her chicken to the judge.
Very well,
he said to Edward.
You are free, but don't steal again.
Chapter 20. Return to Hendon Hall.
Miles and Edward left the judge very quickly.
Where do we go now?
Asked Edward. To my home, said Miles. To Hendon Hall. Edward was very tired and hungry. He liked this idea.
Yes,
he said.
Let's go to Hendon Hall. We will rest, and then we will return to the palace.
They walked for a long time out of London and into the countryside. They went across fields, through woods, and past lots of pretty houses. They spent the night in a small hotel. They carried on the next morning, and soon they reached Hendon Hall. Here is Hendon Hall, my king. My family will be so happy to see me. They will love you too. Look how big it is. There are 70 rooms, said Miles. He was very happy to see his old home again after so much time. They walked up the long path to the door.
Has it changed?
Asked Edward. The house looked very small to him. No, Everything is the same. Miles smiled and knocked on the big old door. They waited, but nobody came.
"Knock again,"
said Edward. Miles knocked on the door. Again they waited for a long time, and then the door opened. The man at the door looked like Miles, but he was younger. Miles smiled at him. "Hello, my brother Hugh. After all this time, I have missed you so much." But Hugh did not smile. "I don't know who you are," he said. "What do you mean?" asked Miles. He did not understand. "I'm your brother. I've been away for years. I was a prisoner, but now I've come home." Edward did not like Hugh's face. It was unfriendly and unkind. "You are not Miles," said Hugh. He was very serious. "I got a letter a few years ago. The letter said Miles died in the war in France." Miles was very surprised. "No," Miles said. "That's not true. I'm here. I'm alive. My brother is dead." "You do not even look like him," replied Hugh. "That is impossible," shouted Miles. "Where is my father? Our father. He will know me." "My father died 2 years ago," said Hugh. "Oh, no," said Miles. He looked down for a long time. He was very sad, and he wanted to cry. Edward understood. "Where is my love, Lady Edith?" Miles asked quietly. "She will know me." "Do not talk about Lady Edith," said Hugh angrily. "She is my wife." "Your wife?" asked Miles. "That is impossible. I am going to marry Lady Edith." "Be quiet," shouted Hugh. "You are not my brother. I will get Lady Edith, but she will not know you." Hugh returned with a very beautiful woman. She walked slowly and looked at the floor. She was very sad. "My Edith," said Miles. "I've waited so long to see you." Miles ran towards Lady Edith, but Hugh stopped him. At last, Lady Edith looked at Miles. "I don't know who you are," she said. Her face was white, and it did not move. Edward thought she might cry. "Edith," Miles replied. "It's me. You know me." He believed Hugh made her say these things. He was very sad because he loved her. "I don't know who you are," she said again, and then she ran out of the room. "You see, my wife doesn't know you. The guards are coming. They will take you to prison. Do not try to run away," Hugh shouted. "This is my house," replied Miles. "I will not leave." Just then, 4 strong guards came and took Miles and Edward to prison.
Chapter 21. Stories from the Prison.
Once again, Edward and Miles were in trouble. The prison was dark and dirty. There were a lot of people arguing and fighting. Edward and Miles sat down on the cold stone floor. Both thought about their own problems. Edward thought about returning to the palace. Miles thought about Hugh and his love, Lady Edith. The other men in the prison told each other their stories. Edward listened, and he remembered the story of the farmer.
"These stories are terrible,"
he said to himself.
"I must hear more stories and learn from them. Then I will be a good, kind king." "Why are you in prison?"
Edward asked one man.
"People said I stole a horse," he replied. "I said I didn't do it, and the judge believed me." "Then why are you here?" asked Edward. "Because I am a poor man," he said. "I haven't got a home, and I can't buy food. I have to beg, and beggars are sent to prison."
Then Edward asked another man.
"I found a hawk," said the man. "I took it to its owner, but he said I stole the bird. The judge sent me to prison for 20 years. "That's not fair,"
said Edward. He was very angry. Another man told Edward his story.
"I said a politician was a bad man," he said. "It was true, but the politician knew the judge. I will be in prison forever."
Edward thought about these stories for a long time.
"When I am the king," he said to himself, "I will try to help all these people."
At last, he fell asleep. The next morning, a guard woke them up.
"You've got a visitor,"
he said.
"A visitor?"
asked Miles. "Who is it?" A small old man came to the prison door to talk to them.
"Blake Andrews!" shouted Miles. "It's old Mr. Andrews. He was one of our servants in Hendon Hall. He was a good man."
Mr. Andrews was very worried. He walked over to Miles. When the guard left the room, he went on his knees.
Chapter 22. Freedom before the Coronation.
"Sir Miles,"
he whispered. He was very happy to see Miles again.
"We thought you were dead. Now here you are, alive."
"Why did you think I was dead?" asked Miles.
"We saw a letter,"
said old Mr. Andrews.
"It said you were dead, but some of us didn't think it was real. Some people said your brother wrote the letter. He wanted everybody to think you were dead. Then he could marry Lady Edith."
"That's terrible," said Miles. "Why didn't you stop him?"
"Your brother is a very angry man," said Mr. Andrews. We have to work for him, and we are all frightened of him. After your father died, we didn't know what to do."
"Listen," said Miles. "You must help us to get out of prison."
"I will try,"
said old Mr. Andrews.
"but things are difficult. The coronation is tomorrow, and everybody is very busy."
"Coronation?" said Edward, surprised.
"Yes,"
said Mr. Andrews.
"the new king will be crowned."
"The new king?" said Edward. "They need to find him first." Mr. Andrews did not hear Edward.
"People say the new king is mad,"
said Mr. Andrews.
"but they also say he is kind."
"What king?" shouted Edward. "We have to get out of this prison now!" Old Mr. Andrews did not understand why Edward was so angry. He thought he must be mad.
"I will try to help you,"
Mr. Andrews said. Edward and Miles watched Andrews talk to the prison guard. He gave the guard some money. The guard smiled and nodded his head. A few hours later, the guard opened the door. "You can go," he said to Edward and Miles, "but you must leave this place and never return to Hendon Hall." Edward and Miles ran out of the prison. Miles was very interested in the new king. Mr. Andrews said the new king was a good person who wanted to help people. Perhaps he could help Miles to get Hendon Hall back. It would be very difficult to speak to the new king, but he did not have another idea. Edward was very worried. He needed to be at the coronation. He had to tell everybody that he was the real king. "What do we do now?" Miles asked Edward. "We go to London," said Edward. They walked very quickly to London and arrived late that night. The coronation would happen the next day in a huge church called Westminster Abbey. Thousands of people were waiting outside the Abbey. They wanted to see the new king the next day. There were so many people that Edward and Miles soon lost each other. Tom was sleeping in a big, soft bed, and the real king was outside alone. He was hungry, tired, and wearing rags.
Chapter 23. Tom learns to be king.
Tom slowly learnt how to be a king. After a few days, he started to enjoy his new life. He was not frightened now, and he loved living in the palace. He really liked telling people what to do. They listened to everything he said and did everything he told them to. No one thought he was mad. Tom loved sleeping on the big, soft bed. When he wanted to sleep all day, he told the servants to leave him alone, and they did. He ate chicken at every meal. He liked all the food in the palace, and he was never hungry. Tom also liked having servants now, because it was so easy. He did not have to get dressed, wash, cut his food, pour his water, or get ready for bed. The servants did everything for him. He liked this so much that he got hundreds more servants. He also loved the rich clothes, and he bought many more. The clothes a young king wore were even better than the clothes of the prince. He had lots of red and gold coats made of very expensive materials. Tom felt wonderful when he wore them, like a real king. When he was bored, he walked in the big palace gardens with Lady Jane and Lady Elizabeth. They played games and they talked too. The young girls were friendly and funny. Tom liked them. Tom was so busy that he did not think about Edward or his own family very often. He hoped Edward was happy, and he missed his mother and his sisters, but he did not want them to come to the palace. He did not want to be a pauper again. Sometimes this made him feel bad. Then he would buy a new coat or walk in the palace gardens, and he was happy again.
Chapter 24. Tom meets his mother.
On the morning of the coronation, Tom woke up and heard all the people waiting for him outside. It sounded like music, and it made him very happy. Then his servants dressed him in the most beautiful and expensive clothes. He wore a white silk shirt, a rich gold coat, a big hat with a feather in it, and fine leather shoes. He looked like a real king. Soon he was in a fine carriage pulled by horses. They were going through the streets of London in a huge parade. There were lots of carriages and soldiers and horses. Thousands of people were watching the parade. They shouted and sang. Everybody was happy. "Long live the king!" they shouted. Tom smiled at them. He loved being the king. He laughed and threw money out of his carriage for the poor people. But then, in the crowd, he saw a face he knew. It was his mother. He was so surprised, he put his hand up in front of his face. His palm was turned out. Then Mrs. Canty knew this boy was not King Edward. He was her son, Tom, who was clever and dreamt of being a prince. "My son! My son!" she shouted. She ran into the street, past the guards, in front of the royal carriage. "Oh, my child! Oh, my boy!" she cried. "Tom! Tom! It's me! Your mother!" She held his leg, but the guards pulled her away. "I do not know you, woman!" Tom shouted at his mother. "I do not know you!" He saw the guards take his mother away. She was crying. Tom felt terrible. He should not have said that to her. She was his mother. He wanted to kiss her and talk to her about his new life. He was not a king. The royal carriage drove on, but now Tom was not happy. He stopped smiling and waving to people. He stopped throwing money from the carriage. He stopped enjoying the wonderful parade.
"Our new king is sad,"
shouted one man.
"And it's his coronation day too,"
said another.
"We thought he was a kind and happy king,"
the people said. "Please look happy, sir," said the Lord Protector to Tom. "The people can see that you are sad. They are worried."
"That woman was my mother,"
said Tom sadly. He wanted to cry. He wanted to get out of the carriage and take off all his fine clothes. He wanted to go to Offal Court with his mother and his sisters. He did not want to be the king now. He only wanted to be Tom Canty. "Oh, no," said the Lord Protector. "The new king is mad again. What will happen at the coronation?"
Chapter 25. The True King Appears.
Westminster Abbey was full of people. Kings, queens, princes and princesses from all over Europe came to see the coronation. Every lord and lady and duke and earl in England was there. They wore beautiful jewels and clothes in many different colours. Everybody waited to see the new king. After a long time, trumpets started to play. The big doors opened and everybody stood up. The coronation was beginning. And then the pauper Tom Canty walked in. He looked wonderful in his coronation clothes. Everybody thought Tom looked like a king, but he felt terrible. He was thinking about his mother. Tom walked through the abbey, past all the kings and queens and lords and ladies. He sat on the throne, and the coronation began. When the coronation was nearly finished, Tom felt ill, and his face was white. Suddenly, the doors opened again. This time, a boy dressed in dirty old rags walked in. Everybody stopped and looked at this pauper.
"You must not put the crown of England on that boy's head," he shouted. "I am the true King of England."
Nobody believed him. Everything went very quiet for a moment, and then the guards picked Edward up. They were going to throw him out of the abbey.
"Stop!"
Tom shouted to the guards.
"Leave him alone. It is true. He is the King of England."
"Don't listen to the king," the Lord Protector said to the guards. "He is ill again. Take that pauper to prison." But Tom shouted,
"Do not touch him. He is the king."
Then he ran to Edward and went on his knees.
"Put the crown on, my king. It is yours,"
Tom said to Edward. Everybody in the abbey looked at Tom, then at Edward, then at Tom again. They saw that the boys' faces were the same. The Lord Protector thought for a moment. "Sir, I need to ask some questions," he said.
Chapter 26. The Mystery of the Great Seal.
"I will answer,"
replied Edward. "How many rooms are there in the palace?" asked the Lord Protector, and Edward answered correctly. "Describe the king's bedroom," he said, and Edward described his bedroom. "Tell me about your sisters," the Lord Protector said, and Edward talked all about Lady Elizabeth and Lady Mary. Edward spoke in Latin and Greek and French. He told the Lord Protector how many servants the king had and what was eaten at royal banquets. "Well," the Lord Protector said, "this is interesting, but it does not mean that you are the true King of England. If you answer my next question, I will know you are the king." Tom was very worried. He wanted to go home to Offal Court. Edward might get the answer wrong. Then Tom would have to live in the palace forever. "Where is the Great Seal of England?" asked the Lord Protector. "Only the real king knows where it is." The Lord Protector was very pleased. He thought this pauper would not be able to answer the question.
"I know where the Great Seal is," said Edward. "It is in my bedroom, in a small cupboard behind a picture of my father."
"Very well," said the Lord Protector. "Guards, go there now and look." The guards ran to the palace. In the abbey, everybody waited. They were worried. What was going to happen? Tom Canty stood alone. 30 minutes later, the guards returned to the abbey.
"The Great Seal is not there, sir," they said. "What? You must look again. It is a beautiful gold object. It is in my cupboard,"
shouted Edward. He was very frightened now. He thought that the Lord Protector would send him to prison.
"Wait,"
said Tom.
"A beautiful gold object. I know where it is. Think about the day we met. You hid it before you ran outside. Do you remember? You went to shout at the guard."
Edward thought for a very long time. Everybody was quiet. Then he said,
"I cannot remember." "You must," said Tom. "It's very important. Nobody will believe that you are the real King of England. Listen to me. I will describe that day, and you will remember where the Great Seal is."
Chapter 27. King Edward is crowned.
"1 week ago," continued Tom, "a royal guard hit me, and you asked me to come into the palace. I told you about my life. You were very kind, and you gave me lots of food. Then we swapped clothes. You wore my rags, and I wore your beautiful clothes." "Yes, I remember that. We thought it would be funny," said Edward. "But then I went outside to shout at the guard. He didn't believe I was the prince. He threw me out of the palace."
Edward stopped talking and thought again.
"Of course,"
he smiled.
"Now I remember it clearly. Before I went out—"
"What happened?" asked the Lord Protector.
"I put the Great Seal in the suit of armour next to the door,"
said Edward.
"Yes, that's right,"
said Tom. Then he told the guards,
"Go and get the Great Seal."
Again, the guards went to the palace. Everybody waited. They talked and talked about the boy's story. At last, the guards came back. Everybody was quiet. "Well," asked the Lord Protector, "did you find the Great Seal of England?" One of the guards held up his hand. In his hand was the beautiful gold object.
"We found the Great Seal in the suit of armour."
Then there was a loud shout from the people.
"Long live the true king!"
Tom took off the gold coronation coat and put it on Edward. Edward sat on the throne, and the coronation continued. The real king was crowned.
Chapter 28. Rewards and a Happy Ending.
When the coronation was happening, Miles was looking for Edward. He was very worried about his young friend. He was also worried about Lady Edith and Hendon Hall. Miles went to the palace, and he waited outside. He was hoping to see the king and ask for his help. He waited for so long that he fell asleep. The next morning, a servant walked out of the palace. He saw a man asleep by the palace gates. There were often people sleeping there, but this man was different. After the coronation, the new king told all the servants to look for a tall man in old soldier's clothes. He was called Miles Hendon, and he was a good friend of the new king. The servant looked at the sleeping man. He was tall, and he was wearing old soldier's clothes. The servant woke the man up.
"Is your name Miles Hendon?"
he asked.
"Yes, it is,"
replied Miles.
"Why?"
"Come with me, sir,"
said the servant.
"We are going to see the king."
The servant took Miles into the palace. Miles was very surprised. He thought it would be very difficult to meet the king, but it was easy. They went into a big room with lots of people in it. Miles stood in the middle of the room, and he waited to speak to the king. The new king was sitting on the throne, and he was talking to a servant. Miles looked around the beautiful room. He felt very lucky. The new king was wearing expensive fine clothes. There were lots of servants all around him. Then Miles saw the king's face.
"My boy,"
whispered Miles to himself.
Is it really him?
Miles could not believe it. The king looked just like young Tom Canty. He had an idea. He saw a chair in front of the throne. He walked over to it and sat down.
"What are you doing?"
shouted a servant.
"You can't sit down in front of the king."
The king heard this, and he looked at Miles.
"Oh, yes, he can,"
said the king, smiling.
"This man is Miles Hendon. He is my good friend. He can sit down in front of the king, and so can all of his children forever and ever."
Miles could not speak. He laughed and cried at the same time. His young friend was not mad. He really was the king.
"I sent my guards to Hendon Hall," the king said. "Hugh said that he wrote the letter. Do not worry. He will go to prison. You can live in Hendon Hall, and you can marry Lady Edith."
Miles was so happy. He wanted to kiss the boy. Then he remembered that his young friend was the king, and he went down on his knees.
"Thank you for everything, my king," said Miles. "I will return to Hendon Hall and marry Lady Edith. But please, don't send Hugh to prison."
"OK, he won't go to prison. You are a very kind man and a true friend, Sir Miles. I hope you will be very happy,"
said the king. Then Tom Canty came into the room. He was not wearing rags, but his clothes were plain. Miles could not believe what he saw. The boy looked the same as his king. The story was all true.
"Tom Canty,"
said King Edward.
"I've been told about your life in the palace. I'm pleased with you. You were a good king. I want you to live in Christ's Hospital and help the boys there. Make them clever and kind like you. I will give you and your family lots of money. You will never be poor or hungry again."
Miles Hendon returned to Hendon Hall and married Lady Edith. Tom, his mother, and his sisters went to live in Christ's Hospital. They never saw John Canty or Grandmother Canty again. Tom helped the boys at the hospital, and he lived a long and happy life. People always spoke about his life in the palace. Edward saw Tom Canty and Miles Hendon often, and they always talked about their story. Sadly, though, King Edward died when he was just 15. Before he died, he was a great king. He was very kind to his people. He listened to them, and he helped them. This is because he learned a lot when he was a pauper.
Subscribe now.